Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Anand. I work at Reddit as a director of engineering. So first of all, I want to thank Google for having me here. And so I'm going to walk through our partnership with AMP and Reddit. A little bit about me. So I grew up in India. I did and then moved to US for my higher education, did my master's at Purdue University, and then spent about a little under 8 years at Microsoft working on some of their compilers, data analysis tools, business applications. And then here at Reddit, I lead the team called Reddit Community Experiences, primarily focused on our subreddit experiences for consumption, creation, and moderation, and also lead the web platform, including the desktop, mobile web, and AMP. And finally, I'm also leading the biggest redesign for Reddit, and been working on it for the last year. Quick poll, how many of you use Reddit here often? OK, that's quite a lot of people. So for people who don't use Reddit, I just wanted to give a very brief overview of what is Reddit, how Reddit works. So Reddit is commonly called the front page of the internet. It has a lot of news and discussion happening on the platform. But internally, we think of it as a platform where people can find communities that are excited about passions as you are and can have real, authentic conversation. And that's what we think makes Reddit special. So check it out if you haven't already used Reddit. So even for people who have used Reddit, I don't know how big Reddit is. So Reddit by numbers. So Reddit is ranked 4th in the US and 7th globally by Alexa. And Alexa ranks based on the usage and engagement on the site. And currently, we have about 330 million monthly active users in Reddit, with about 1.1 million communities or subreddits, which creates about 1 million posts a day and 5 million comments in a day, and about 75 million upvotes and downvotes happening on the site every day. So let's talk about Reddit, how Reddit works very briefly. So Reddit has these 4 things coming together in an interesting way to create a very engaging site. Number 1, pseudonymous account. Reddit is a place where you don't need to provide your real identity. So you can use your pseudonymous account, which means you can be more authentic because you don't need to hide your opinion. Number 2, Reddit is driven by communities. It's not like a long list of content. So you have communities which only allows you to post video links or only allows you to talk about sports. You got to follow the rules. Number 3 is voting. Voting is a big part of Reddit. We have upvotes and downvotes similar to other platforms. And finally, the hot friend page. So even if you're not engaged in any communities or not signed up for Reddit, you can get to the best stuff across all the communities in Reddit by going to the front page, reddit.com. So all these 4 things come in with a high scale. It helps us create a very, very highly curated, high addictive content. Internally, we think of it as like a weaponized procrastination, and we are here to take down the world's productivity. So we got all the scale. We have millions of people. What do we do with that power? Let me show it to you. So on the left is a cat actually fist bumping a human. On the right, a cat actually walking a human. Clearly a world where cat is in charge. But this content had about like 1 million upvotes, or 100,000 upvotes and 1 million views. Reddit does a lot of cat pictures, we will admit it. But wait, is it just only cat pictures? But no, we have a little bit more other communities. That's what I've been told. So yes. So we put a lot of emphasis on community over the content, and both of those things over the individual creators, which creates a unique characteristics for the people on Reddit. They are creative, authentic, and also the community-driven empathy is pretty amazing. Here's an example. Our assistance is a community where you can post for assistance. And in this particular example, Kayla Davis was looking for a kidney donor, and she was able to find a kidney donor, and the whole process took about a year from the initial contact for the process to take place. But this is an example of a Reddit scale where communities coordinate for a greater impact. So the point of the talk with this kind of an intro is we have all this content, and how do we get our users to find the content they like? And for Reddit, SEO has been pretty huge all the time. And the chart shows the Google trends for Reddit over the last few years. Reddit has been growing, and which makes Google SEO and especially AMP very, very important for us. Considering the history, I thought the best way to do this talk would be walk through our partnership with Google around AMP, and by giving a brief history, some of the technical challenges we ran into, and the design considerations we had to do, and also end it with the roadmap for 2018. So it's 2016. Google was looking for AMP beta search partners. And as we just talked about, Reddit, one of the biggest source of traffic is our SEO users. And the way Google talked about it was, if we could figure out a way to put the site on AMP, we could get a really performant experience for our users, and also maybe get more traffic on Reddit. So it was really valuable for us and very valuable for our engineer. But the challenge was we didn't have people to work on this. At that point, Reddit was a very, very small company. And maybe we got 1 or 2 engineers to work on AMP. So we had to figure out what should we invest our resources in. So since AMP is primarily a mobile experience, we chose to use React and Redux-based version of our mobile web app at that time. And so starting with an existing code base helped us to focus our limited engineering resources on solving the actual problem of how do you create an AMP experience different from your mobile web experience. Quick look at the tech stack. React and Redux might seem like a really odd choice for an AMP, which essentially renders static markup. But we found the combination effective. For Reddit, server-side rendering is really huge requirement, and also for our SEO. So because our mobile web rewrite, we already supported server-side rendering, this combination kind of worked for us. So we have the COA handles all the requests for the supported URLs. And every request is handled the same way. Start up Redux, fetch the data, and return it. And each request has its own Redux store. And each of the pages has its Redux action, which acts as the request handler. And all the page information, the subreddits, the posts, or comments are in the Redux. And once the server HTML is rendered from AMP, the API calls are finished. So this is kind of our tech stack. Going in, the next thing that we had considered was React and Redux, as I mentioned earlier, was a setup for isomorphic rendering, but we exclusively used only the server-side rendering. So we were able to use a lot of the server-side code. And the other reason why we had to pick React and Redux was based on our people and productivity and not on the code itself. So the only changes that we had to make on the client side were to piece out the JavaScript and start using the AMP solutions. And React also let us use AMP components like image, AMP image, AMP accordion, which is very similar to how we use the other HTML elements. And it was the engineers did not need to learn a new paradigm to use React with AMP. So I thought I'll just show a quick code sample using telemetry. As we all know, telemetry, we use client-side JavaScript events. This code example is from our mobile web code base, which kind of shows once the page is finished rendering, we send a telemetry event for page view. And the bottom code is when you click on the subreddit button, we track that event as well. So how did this translate to AMP? On the AMP side, we had to use AMP Analytics, which is a declarative JSON API. So we defined the pixel request by name, defined the interactions triggering each request. And requests are logged on the server side. And for the client-side information, we had to use the query parameter names. And AMP Analytics let us convert the predefined names with the values. And so we can collect information like the viewport dimensions or canonical URL. So the top, we have defined the request for the page view and the query parameters on what client-side information we want to pass, and the triggers are defined below. So it was pretty easy to set up our AMP client pages. So from the technical side, we also had to take in some of our design considerations, given our AMP was primarily targeted for logged out SEO users. So on the right, you see the mobile web page. On the left, you see the AMP web page of the same post. You can clearly see that some of the interactivity is removed in the AMP because when you're logged in Reddit, you get to upvote the content, downvote the content, post a comment. So those were removed, and a lot of emphasis was put on the content itself. So it was like pretty straightforward to set up our first set of AMP pages. So there was in 2016, Reddit has like four different post types, primarily self-post, link, image, and video. So for our first version, we chose to set up AMP pages for the self-post, which contributes, I think, roughly about 40% of our post types in Reddit. So we got about like 100 million of self-posts created on Reddit with the corresponding AMP page now, and we saw a significant growth in our usage. And AMP was like pretty much a game changer for us for mobile web because it was loading really fast and in a much reliable manner. So, of course, the next thing we did was stop working on AMP. But there was a good reason for it at that time. The reason was Reddit had a completely whole new leadership team. Reddit was expanding. And we also picked up the goal of redoing the entire site. So that kind of took our attention off AMP. But we eventually came back to it. And once we built up an engineering team, we had a little bit more people. We partnered with Google last summer for a snooze day. Reddit's snooze day is basically our hackathon at Reddit, where everyone in the company gets about a week off, where they can go work on any projects that they like. And some of our engineers decided to partner with Google engineers and pick up on the work that we left for the AMP pages. And we also used this as an initiative to get started on some of the core technical problems that we wanted to solve with AMP. And so these were some of the initiatives, and I'll go through them one by one. Night mode. Redditors allow night mode. So this is what it looks like in our mobile web page. So trying to support this in AMP, we ran into a couple of issues. And the solution we came up with was we put the whole page within a template, which means we couldn't use other templates. And also the performance was bad because the whole page was within the template. And then the last one is there was potentially a problem where like the page flashed from the white background to the black theme when the template was updating. And there was no good way of sharing the preferences between AMP cache and Reddit. So we had some Google engineers. We worked with them. They gave us a good proposal on how to use the AMP dynamic CSS classes, which the endpoint will return a set of CSS classes that should be applied on the document's body. The endpoint must complete within the render blocking window. If not, they'll cache it for the next request. And so this was a solution that we came up with. We kind of got some prototype done. And the next one, so most of you who are on Reddit, I believe you use the site logged out. But if you do log in, you get to do a few more actions, like upvoting, downvoting, commenting. So this was, again, an interesting challenge that we wanted to solve for AMP, because we didn't have a good way of logging in our AMP users, figure out the preferences. And again, the Google team helped us out by helping us do a prototype on using AMP access. The proposal was to use declarative JSON for authorization and and have an API call for logging in. And AMP access also lets you conditionally display content based on if you're logged in or logged out. So in this case, we used AMP access to show an upward button. If you're logged in, it'll let you upward. But if you're logged out, it'll point you to the login page for you to log in. So these two were like kind of a technical challenges. We kind of had solutions, but we couldn't make much progress during the hackathon. But we also wanted to work on something that we could ship right after the hackathon. So as I mentioned earlier, we had 4 post types: self, link, image, and video. Self post, we shipped it in 2016. Link and image post also contributes to about like 45% of our content in Reddit. And right after the hackathon, we shipped these 2 pages. On the left, you see the link post. On the right is an image post. So we shipped this in September of 2017. So to look at some of the stats quickly, so it shows starting from October to like January, we saw like a 30% bump in our SEO AMP users. So it was pretty good to see a ton of traffic coming through AMP. And another look at our SEO users by platform. So if you just look at our mobile web SEO traffic, AMP contributes to 60% of our SEO traffic. But if you bring in the desktop or the web traffic, it contributes to like 30% of our traffic. Like 1/3 of our traffic is coming, or SEO traffic is coming through AMP. So here is the team from Reddit and Google who worked on it. And a huge shout out for Paul and the team from Google and Reddit who worked on the Snooze Day to make it successful. And I believe they also had some good fun when they were out there. So that's, hope you guys enjoyed the walkthrough our partnership with Google. I also want to talk to you guys about what we have planned for the future. OK, so 2018, so video post, it's not future anymore. We literally shipped a change to enable video post yesterday night. And one of my colleagues, Vaibhav, he just sent me a screenshot. It's actually live now. So we finally have all the post types live in AMP Google. And then we have a couple of key initiatives that we wanted to support for power users using the night mode, the logged-in actions that we talked about in our previous hackathon. And we also want to make the site look a little better, align with our redesign. Kind of looks OK-ish in our opinion. And also, being at the conference, like I really love the AMP stories. And we also want to figure out a way how we can start using them. So this was not in our plan till we were in the conference yesterday. So that's awesome. And then, so actually, even have listed a few of these long-term looking items. We are in a very similar position to like what we did last year, where like we're still redoing the biggest redesign for Reddit. And we're still, at least this time, we're only a couple of months away from shipping it. So we'll be picking up a lot of AMP stuff after we ship the redesign. So to kind of disappoint you guys on the fact that I didn't have anything really cool, new stuff to show in AMP, I thought it would be better to show you guys how the new Reddit redesign looks like. So yeah, so we all love Reddit, but we also understand like the Reddit is not welcoming for new users. And it's kind of scary for certain people, too. So this is what the Reddit UI looks like now. The UI hasn't been literally developed in the last 12 years. And I still remember, like, when I was leaving Microsoft, I told my wife, like, hey, I'm going to Reddit. And then once I signed the offer, she pulled her laptop, opened it up, went to reddit.com. And then I could literally see her face. She was frightened. I was like, and then she's like, REDDIT, that's where you're going, right? I was like, yeah. Like, so she was literally scared. And then I told her, like, don't worry, we're going to fix that in the coming year. So we have seen the confusion in a lot of people who go to Reddit and don't know what it is. So we spent a whole lot of last year getting the redesign done. And this is kind of what it looks like. So you can start using Reddit the way you like it, based on your viewing preference. So we have different view modes. So this one is called the card view. where the images and the videos and GIFs are auto-expanded. And we also have this thing called the classic view, which gives a very iconic look for people who have used Reddit, and it has a similarity and a familiarity with the new redesign. And we also put a lot of emphasis on our communities, which is like the core of Reddit, and provided them a lot of personalization tools where they can have their unique identity for each communities. So that's kind of what the redesign looks like. And yeah, let me know if you guys want to be in the beta. We're going through a beta period now. And so with that, thank you very much. And I have my contact info right there. And final thing, and a very important thing, we are hiring like crazy. Reddit is trying to hire about 100 engineers this year to work up some of the cool AMP stuff and some of other initiatives. So